Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom from the holy city of Jerusalem. Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, upon which the eyes of all the world are today. I've been hearing above the house here the helicopters of the security forces seeking to secure the great event of the opening of the Embassy of the United States of America in the capital of Israel, indeed the center of the whole world, the holy city of Jerusalem. And at the same time, just to show how important is this event, we have massive demonstrations going on down in Gaza, which are being contained at a great cost of loss of life and injury to the people who have been arousing this warfare against Israel. And so we have very dramatic events unfolding in front of our eyes, and we certainly have the confidence now in God Almighty as we stand today on the eve of Rosh Chodesh Sivan, which begins tonight, and adds to the impending excitement of the excitement of the impending festival of Shavuot that will come this Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night, and Sunday, May the 20th, the first day of the festival of Shavuot, commemorating the receiving of the Torah. And it's fitting, therefore, today that we have studies which will, in the prophet Malachi, that reflect the end of days and the divine judgment upon Israel and upon the nations, which indeed is unfolding in front of our eyes. So with that, let us now turn to our studies of the prophet Malachi. We have been studying today the section from chapter 2, verse 7, through to chapter 3, verse 12. Shalom, today the 29th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5778, corresponding to the 14th of May of the year 2018. Today is the 44th day of the Omer, and it is fitting today that we come to some very elevated passages of the prophet Malachi, evoking the end of days and the need for Israel to repent and to again receive the Torah. So the previous section that we had studied up till chapter in chapter 2 up till verse 16, that previous section was speaking about the problem of the intermarriages that had occurred between the people of Judah and the people of the intermarriage between the members of the tribe of Judah and other nations during the years of the exile. And we now turn to a different facet of the prophet's reproof, and one that has very special meaning, I think, to the generation that grew up after the Holocaust, because the challenge which God puts to the people is the questions of the people about, is there a God that is judging and ruling the world? And now we are starting today at Malachi chapter 2, verse 17, which, although it's the last verse of chapter 2 in the printed Bibles, is really the beginning of a parasha that continues without a break into chapter 3. And so let us now begin with the Hebrew text of Malachi chapter 2, verse 17. Hogatem Adonai bedivereichem ve'omartem bamo hoigonu be'emorechem kol oisei ro tohiv be'einei Adonai uvohem hu chofetz Oy ayei Elohei hamishpot. a very dramatic phrase here, a very startling phrase, which the prophet uses of the people. He says, you've been wearing God down with your words, with your talk. Hogatem, from the Hebrew expression of yageya, the root Yud Gimel Ayin, which means to make very great efforts, and Hogatem is a hif'il form, a causative form. You have caused God to weary. B'divrechem, the Hebrew word davar has a connotation of a sharp and determined word, a strong word. You've been speaking strong words, and the people again innocently say, well, how could we have wearied God? And the prophet answers, Be'emorchem, you have been saying, Kol oisei ro tov be'einei Hashem, everyone that perpetrates evil must be good in the eyes of the Lord. Uvohem hu chofetz, it's through in them that he shows favor, takes favor. Or ayeh elokei hamishpat, or if that is not the case, if the divine judgment is not upside down, if it's not the case that God is showing favor to the wicked because we see their success, their material success, their power, their influence, their wealth, their luxury, if it's not the case, Ayeh Elokei Amishpat, where is the God of justice? Just as people did ask at the time of the Holocaust and afterwards, where was God during the Holocaust? Here were the oppressors riding high at the time, and the people they were persecuting were in the direst of suffering, and indeed many people felt that there is no divine justice in the world. And indeed, this question which is raised here by the prophet, this issue which is raised here by the prophet, is really the key to the whole of the book of Job, which we studied in our series of Tanakh studies some months ago. And the entire book of Job is devoted to precisely this question that, as Job himself repeatedly points out, the wicked seem to prosper in this world. They have it all gone. There seems to be no sense, rhyme, or reason in the suffering of the righteous, and it seems as though God has withdrawn from the world and left it to its own devices without showing his providence. And it's precisely the issue which is raised here in the prophet Malachi, with teachings about the answer to this question, which are in some ways, although the words of the prophet are fairly terse here and somewhat obscure, nevertheless, the teaching that comes out is clearer than the teaching that comes forth from the very extensive discourses in the book of Job, which is specifically devoted to the subject. But here we will find in the prophet Malachi the very core of the answer, which at the end Elihu ben Barachel gives to Job, that the apparent injustice of our world can only be understood by accepting, believing, and knowing that God takes vengeance on the wicked in the life of the world to come. And that is the answer which will come forth in the following lines of the prophet. So here the closing verse of chapter 2 is setting the subject matter before the prophet that he will now explain forth, and his answer is, if you think that there is no God of judgment, then the prophet now will set before us that indeed God will come to the judgment of the world. There will be the final judgment, and that is what the closing chapter of Malachi is about. Although the prophet goes from one subject to another, he comes back at the very end to God's fiery judgment. And here he begins this the first of the closing discourses of his prophecy, speaking about the end of days and the coming of Elijah the prophet to herald the coming of Melech Mashiach. Malachi chapter 3, now verse 1. Hineni shoileach malochi ufino derech lefonoi ופיסום יבוא אל היכולו ההודוין אשר אתם מבקשים ומלאך הבריס אשר אתם חפצים הנה בוא אומר אדוני צבאות. Here I am sending my malach, my messenger, and it is from here that the name of our prophet has come. The Malachi, our Malachi, is heralding the coming of the future Malachi, the future emissary of God. Ufino derech lefonoi. He is this emissary, which is, as our commentators teach and our sages, this is Elijah the prophet, as is specified by Malachi himself at the end of this chapter. This Malach, he is preparing the way for God to return his presence to Zion, Jerusalem, and Israel. Ufisom yovo el hicholo. Fisom, suddenly shall he come to his sanctuary. So here we have the concept of the Shekhinah that is going to return to God's sanctuary. And Ha'adon asher atem mevakshim, as we shall see in our commentators, the Lord that you seek, the Lord simultaneously refers to the return of the Shekhinah to Israel, the indwelling presence, and to Melech Mashiach. And the concluding section of the verse, Umalach habris asher atem chafetzim hinei vo, the angel of the covenant that you desire, that you seek, here he has come already. This is held by the commentators, we shall see, to be a reference again to Elijah. The verse hinei vo, he has come, implies that this occurs before the Adon, the Lord, namely the Shekhinah and the Mashiach come, that Elijah comes to herald the coming of Mashiach and to cleanse the way, as the ensuing verses will explain. And all this is the message of God to the people who have asked, where is God's justice? God is saying the justice is to come and the judgment will be. And verse 2 continues, evoking the fearsomeness of the coming day of judgment. Umihi mechalkel es yom bo, umi ha'oimeid behero oisoi, ki hu ke'ish metzoreif, uchavoiris mechabesim. Who can contain, who can endure the day of his coming? Lest we think that the day of God's judgment is something to be excited and enthusiastic about. It's a fearful day, the day of his actual being seen and appearance. Who can stand before this? Ki hu ke'ish metzoref. On the one side, he is smelting like fire. He is like the fire of the metzaref, of the smelter, who is heating up the metal until the metal melts and the dross comes off. Uchavoiris mechabsim. Voiris is a plant that is used as a cleansing agent, a soap. The lye is also known as the soap wort, and boiris is known as a powerful cleansing agent to our sages in the Talmud and the rabbinical writings. And like the launderer's cleanser he will come to cleanse out the people, as we shall see in the following verses. We shall come back to look at our commentaries on these verses, but to get the overall picture first of this amazing section of the prophet. In verse 3, we begin to see what the cleansing process is going to be, and it's on several levels. There will be the cleansing of the people in terms of pedigree and ancestral purity, and this is the root of our sages' teaching, that Elijah comes to sort out the different members of the different tribes and who is held to be pure and eligible for the people and who will be set aside. Verse 3 speaks more specifically about the purification of the priests and the Levites, who had been the subject of the prophet's very fierce reproof earlier in their failure to respect adequately the honor due to the temple. So at this time, when all the tables will be turned against the wicked, verse 3, Vayoshav metzoreif umetaher kesef ותיחד את בני לוי וזיקק עיסם כזהב וככסף והיו לאדוני מגישי מנחה בצדקה. God shall come back and smelt out and purify the silver, the inner silver in the souls of the people. V'tiheres b'nei Levi, he will purify the sons of Levi, that is the tribe of Levi, which include specifically the sons of Aaron, who were the Kohanim, the priests, and all of the rest of the tribe, who were the ministers in the sanctuary and in the temple singers, the temple gatekeepers, and were responsible for the affairs of the temple. And zikek osam, he will purify and refine them. Kazoho v'chakosef, he will bring out the inner purity of their souls, like the zahav, the pure zahav of bina, understanding, and gevurah, true holy might. The chakosef, like silver, like the side of chesed, the side of love and kindness. They will have these qualities together. These are the qualities of the tribe of Levi, the tribe as a whole, gevurah, and specifically the Kohanim, kesef, chesed. They shall return to serve God, presenting the mincha offerings on the altar, bitzedakah, in true righteousness. The word tzedakah carries in English the connotations both of righteousness and of charity, where in charity we redress the injustices of poverty and suffering. And here there will come back the attribute of tzedakah to the people, and we shall see the concept of tzedakah recur in these closing prophecies. We shall see it recur in our section of study today in a few verses' time, and we shall see it at the end of the prophecy, where the future shining of the Son of Redemption to Israel will be the shine like the sun with healing in its wings. This will be the shining of a shemesh tzedakah, the bright light of tzedakah, righteousness and charity. So already now this concept is introduced by the prophet. And verse 4, a verse that is repeated in our prayers in some of the nuschaot, some of the versions of the prayer service, the very closing words of some people of their personal Shmona Esrei, a prayer after the final Elokai netzor lashoni mira, God guard my tongue from evil, at the end of their final stepping back, Oseh shalom b'mramav, who makes peace in his high places, who will make peace for us. The following verse 4 of Malachi is recited. v'yorevo l'Adonai minechas Yehuda v'Yerushalayim ki yemei olam u'cheshonim kadmonios. And pleasing to the Lord shall be the offering of Judah and Jerusalem, as in the days of eternity and the years of old. Well, our commentators specify particular ages of glory which are expressed in these words in the prophet. The commentator Metzudat David tells us that Yemei Olam refers to the time of glory of the sanctuary of Moses, and Shanim Kadmoniyos refers to the days of glory in the time of Solomon. And in future, the offerings of Judah, the offerings to the Lord will be offering of Judah and Jerusalem will be pleasing to God as it was in those times of glory. Those times of glory were marked by all of the 12 tribes being unified together around the sanctuary in the wilderness and at the temple in Jerusalem. And here the conjunction of Judah, who was being addressed by the prophet because the other tribes had gone into exile, Judah with Jerusalem, which will again become the focus of all the tribes. This will be the pleasing offering to God, that there will be a restoration. Well, now, the coming judgment after that verse of comfort is evoked in verse 5. The judgment is not only against the Levites, the purification of the Levitical and priestly families, but in verse 5 it's a wider purification of the people, of all of the degradation and corruption that has crept in. Verse 5, V'koravti aleichem למשפוט ויויסי עיד ממהר במכשפים ובמנואפים ובנשפועים אל השוקר ובאוישקי שכר סוחיר אלמונו ויוסום ומתגר ולא יראוני אומר אדוני צבאות. The people had said, where is the judge? Where is the God of judgment? And now in our verse, God says, well, I will draw close to you in judgment. V'hoyisi eid mamaher, I shall be a swift witness. God is witness to all of the things that people do in supposed secrecy and privacy and darkness. But God knows all of the secrets, all of those who practice witchcraft, which is practiced in darkness, the occult arts. God will be the witness in his judgment, where he is testifying against all, because he knows the secrets of all. He will bring testimony against the adulterers, to those who swear falsely, because oaths are taken where nobody was witness to the truth, and the person that swears by the name of God that it was as he said, and if it's false, God alone knows. And also God will be the witness against all of those who oppress the needy by holding on to the wages of the hired laborer. They cheat the laborer out of his wages. They cheat the widow. They cheat the orphan. They cheat the weak. And they particularly turn against the ger, matei ger. They turn aside the ger from the path of true judgment. They use the very weak position of the ger, the stranger in our midst, to put him into the inferior position, to pass judgments against him. V'lo yireuni, God will be the witness against all those that do not fear God. The true fear of God is known only to the person in their heart, and God promises that this will be the judgment. Verse 6. Ki ani Adonai Elohi shonisi ve'atem bnei Yaakov lo chalisem. For I, the Lord, have not changed. Although to you, the people, it may appear that there is no justice, that the wicked are riding high in their prosperity, power, and success, God's law has not changed and will not change, and the judgment will catch up with them. Ve'atem bnei Yaakov lo chalisem, you, the children of Jacob, you have not ceased to be. We shall presently see how our commentators bring out that these verses are indeed the answer to the people's complaint that there seems to be no divine judgment, with God's explaining to the people that indeed there is and will be. Before we go on in our present session to the ensuing verses 7 onwards, we'll go back over the verses we have just read. The coming verses from verse 7 onwards until the end of this parasha are mainly centered about people asking where is to be the turning point of their repentance, their teshuvah, and God says that it's all bound up with their giving their tithes in an orderly manner. That will be the answer, that indeed the tithes, which are the expression of tzedakah, of righteousness and charity, that will be the turning point for all the people to enable them to repent. But before going on to these ensuing verses, let us just look back over our commentators as they discuss these very important verses evoking the coming days of judgment and redemption. So let us first look on verse 6 at Rashi's commentary on chapter 3, verse 6. Not verse 6, chapter 3, verse 2. Let's go back to Rashi on verse 1 of our chapter 3. Hineni sholach malachi. The prophet says that God is sending his emissary, his agent, leva'er es haroshoim, to burn out the wicked. The malach habris, the angel of the covenant, noikem nekam bris, he comes to avenge the vengeance of the covenant. Ufino derech lefonai, he shall clear open the road before me, before the Lord, namely clear out the wicked. And who is this God that you want? Rashi's interpretation is Ha'adon asher atem mevakshim, that is Elokei HaMishkabot, the God of justice. Well, now, Metzudat David on this same verse, Hineni sholech malachi, I'm sending my agent, he tells us, Musav lemalo, this is continuing on from the previous verse, to answer their complaint where they said, where is the God of justice? And the prophet now in verse 1 of chapter 3 is saying, at the time of the future redemption, I will send my malach min hashomayim, I will send my emissary from the heavens. V'hu yifane haderech lefonai, he will clear out the path before me. That is to say, he will burn out from the world the sinners and the rebels in order to purify the land before my coming, to cause my indwelling presence to dwell in the land. That is to say, Metzudat David with crystal clarity is explaining that this Malach, namely Elijah the prophet, is coming to bring us back to our senses and to stir people to repent and to take exact vengeance upon the wicked in order to purify the land of Israel, so that it will be fit for the indwelling presence of God. And in what will be expressed this indwelling presence? The continuation of the verse, Bisom yavoi el heicholoi, suddenly there shall come to his palace the Adon. The Adon, says the Metzudat David, Zehu melech Amoshiach. This is the King Messiah, Asher ein kol odom tzapeh miyachel loi, the eye of all men are hoping, expecting, and waiting for him. Umevakesh bi'osoi. Everybody is waiting his coming. And Radak, Rabbi David Kimchi, on our verse here also in his commentary, another commentary, not the same as the Metzudat David, but the commentary of Radak, he explains on the word in our verse, Upitom yavo, suddenly shall he come, that the reason is because the actual date of the end of days has never been revealed. And it does not appear, it's not clarified in the book of Daniel. And that is why here the prophet, who was of course a later contemporary of Daniel, said that the coming of Mashiach will be suddenly, because nobody knows when he will come until he actually comes. Beforehand they will not know. And this corresponds to Daniel chapter 12 verse 9, that says that Sesumim v'chasumim advorim ad eis kates. These matters are closed up and sealed up until the time of the end. And Radak agrees with our words, agrees here with Metzudat David, the commentary we have open before us, that the Adon is the Moshiach. And Radak also admits that the Malach HaBris also refers to Elijah the prophet, and indeed the coming of Elijah is associated with the coming of Moshiach. Elijah is the harbinger, the announcer, and the connection between the covenant and Elijah is, as we see in Book of Kings at the end of Kings Book 1, that it's Elijah that was aghast at the deviation from the covenant by the northern kingdom under particularly King Achav, where indeed they'd come to the point where they ceased to circumcise the children, and Elijah came down to Sinai, to the place of the giving of the Torah, and expressed his zealousness for the covenant. And it's this covenant that Elijah will be sent back to reestablish in the whole of the house of Israel at the end of days, to prepare the way for Melech Moshiach. Now, continues Metzudat David, then Malach HaBris, Metzudat David says, Ken yikare Eliyahu Novi, angel of the covenants, what Elijah is called for, Ki hu kine al bris amilo shemenu malchus Ephraim, Kenam Razal, because Elijah showed zealousness to avenge the neglect of the circumcision. It was he who complained about this, as we see at the end of the first book of Kings, in the chapters about Elijah going down to Mount Horeb, because the kingdom of Ephraim under Achav had prevented the people from fulfilling this mitzvah, as Rabbi said. And what is it that you are wanting to hear? Continuing in verse chapter 3, verse 1, this Malach HaBris that you are wanting, explains the Metzudat David, you want to hear that he's coming to announce the redemption and to revive the dead. For he is the one destined to give this good news, and also to announce the revival of the dead, the resurrection, as it says at the end of this book, the book of Malachi, Anochi sholech lochem es Eliyahu Navi. Among the closing words of the book, I'm sending you Elijah the prophet. Hine bo points out Mitzudat David, the Hebrew word bo in chapter 3 verse 1 is a past tense. Omar Baloshan Ovar, he expresses this in a past tense. Because when Moshiach will come, Elijah will already have had come. He will be the first to come. And Mitzudat David, paraphrasing verse 2, who can bear the day of his coming, of this angel who comes to clear out the pathway? Who will be able to endure on that day when he will be seen and revealed, this angel? For this angel, for this angel will be like fire that refines the silver and burns out the dross, like the detergent soap of the launderers that removes the stains from the garments. So too he will destroy and bring to an end all of the sinners and the rebels. And continuing now, following through Mitzudat David's paraphrase, verse 3, Vayoshev Metzoref, he will go back and be refining and smelting. He is using a language which is the language of human beings talking, applying the metaphor of the angel coming and sitting in judgment and thereby purifying and cleansing the people, just like silver is cleansed and purified from the dross, so too shall Elijah be cleansing the children of Levi, namely HaKohanim B'Lei Levi. These are the priests, the sons of Levi, namely from the house of Aaron, Hanigoshim el Hashem, those who approach the Lord, namely through the temple sacrificial system, though they shall he purify to remove from them those who contemptuously treat the service of the temple with disdain, as came out in the earlier reproofs. He will purify them just as gold and silver, so they will be cleansed from any mixture of evil people among them. They will be to the Lord to offer his sacrifices in tzedakah according to the proper law, the proper way, as is fitting, not like now where they have been offering on the altar the bread that is polluted and defiled, as came out in the previous chapter. And then in that future state, then V'oval Hashem, says Mitzudat David, then the offering of Judah will be sweet to the Lord like the days of eternity, like the days of Moses, and like the years of old, namely the days of Solomon, when God received their sacrifices favorably and fire came down from the heavens and consumed what was on the altar. Well, now, commenting on verse 5 of chapter 3, Mitzudat David paraphrases about how God then will come to pay back in justice the penalty invoked by the actions of each and every person. And here we see then the prophet's answer, and here is a fundamental pillar of the hashkafa, the outlook and worldview of the Torah, that even though there may appear to be no justice, the time will come when God will indeed set everything straight and give everybody their just requites. And God is the swift witness, as we said, the verdict will not need to wait until they thoroughly investigate the witnesses. For I, says God, I myself shall be the witness swift to answer against the sorcerers and those who withheld the wages of the laborers and the widows and the orphans and all the weak, and those who turn aside the true just verdict due to the stranger, turn it aside into corruption and injustice to judge the stranger guilty needlessly. I might also perhaps say a word here about the need today for Jewish people to be aware of the enormous number of gerim who are knocking on our doors, and not to turn those gerim away with the empty platitudes that all you need is to keep the 7 commandments of the children of Noah and what you need with the Jews. The time is now to come not to turn away the gerim, but to teach the gerim, to teach those who are coming to the Jews for Torah, to know the details of the Torah so they will be able to make their own informed choices. But the people that the prophet is criticizing, as Metzudat David now continues to paraphrase on Malachi verse 5 of chapter 3, the prophet discerns in verse 5 the root problem. All of these abominations the people did because they are not afraid of anyone, those rich, powerful forces who are committing these injustices against the needy workers, against the widows and the orphans and the strangers. They're not afraid of anybody against them, because witchcraft and adultery are committed secretly in private places and nobody sees it. The false oath, nobody knows that the person swore falsely. Treacherously withholding the wages of the laborers and the just deserts of the widows and the orphans, and corrupting the judgment of the stranger. All of these people, these are done by the mighty and the powerful, because they're not afraid of those weak people. The widows and orphans and strangers, they're the weakest stratum of the society, and they have nobody to help them. And these people have no fear of God either, because even though he sees and knows all of their deeds and all of the secret thoughts in their hearts, and his hand is mighty over everything, for that reason God will repay them the requites of their deeds. And this is the prophet's answer to the people when the people had said, as we saw in the last verse of the previous chapter, "Where is the God of judgment?" This is his answer, that they will receive their judgment, their verdict, and their requites. So this is really the fundamental pillar of a Torah belief, as expressed in the 13 principles of faith of Rambam Moses Maimonides, that God requites each person with their just deserts. Verse 6 of chapter 3, Ki Hani Hashem lo shonisi. Well, this verse is most important in the Kabbalah, expressing the absolute unity and unchanging nature of God. But here in the simple, more straightforward meaning of the text, Metzudat David explains, "I have not changed," says God. "Lo nishtanu dati mema shehoyo me'az." My approach and my attitude has not changed at all from what it always was. Nothing has changed to make me love wickedness. Lo kamo she'amartem kol ro'isei ra tov ben Hashem. It's not the way you have said, that all of the perpetrators of wickedness must be good in the eyes of God if they're so successful. Now, Metzudat David gives us a first pshat, a first explanation of the meaning of the second part of verse 6. Va'atem b'nei Yaakov lo chelisem, you, the children of Jacob, have not ceased to be. Metzudat gives us a very important insight into the meaning of this verse. Avol atem lo chelisem, you have not ceased from before me, you, the children of Jacob, the children of Israel. Ve'af ki samusu, and even though you will die, beresha, if you die in a state of wickedness, beli mishpat gevul, but without receiving a verdict of a repayment for rebellions and sins in your life in this world, but in time to come, when you shall stand up in the resurrection, then too you are in my hands. And then shall you receive the proper requites. Well, let us turn now to Rashi on the same verse, where Rashi also explains, Lo yichelisem, you, the children of Jacob, you have not ceased to be. Einechem kolim milefonai, you do not cease to be before me. Vehenachti li anefoshes, I've left aside for myself, says God, the souls. Ligbois mehem dinai begehenem, to exact from them my laws when they will suffer in Gehenna, in the suffering of the soul after death of the wicked person in this world. V'chen tirgem Yonatan, so too does Yonatan ben Uziel put it in his Aramaic translation of this verse. Ve'atun devez Yaakov, you, the house of Jacob, deman demis ba'ol mohodein, Dine pasuk, one that dies from this world when the physical body dies, do his judgments cease to be? Kloimar, that is to say, Rashi paraphrasing now the Aramaic words of Targum Yonasan that he's just quoted. Atem sevurim loima dinai bottle, you imagine, you think to say that my judgments are null and void, don't take place. She'en od lipora mimenu, for there's nothing more after the person's physical death in the world. There's nothing more to exact vengeance from them. And the answer is, according to our hashkafa belief, that is not the case, because, as Rashi says, I've left your souls in my hand to deal with you after you're leaving from this world in accordance with your deeds. And now Rashi, after that rather stark teaching, comes to another more favorable pshat on the verse, Leishonisi, I have not changed, says God. The Hebrew expression in the verse of the prophet, Leishonisi, has a number of possible connotations. One is, I have not changed, from the root shinui, leshanot. The number two is a change from the number one, and that's why it's the same root, sheni. Leishonisi, I have not repeated. That's a second connotation of the expression Leishonisi, and our rabbis explain this in the Talmud on this verse, Lehikisi esmi v'shonisi loi. In the past, there was nobody that I ever smote that I had to do it over again. God smote the generation of the flood. He had no need to do it again. They were finished. The same with the generation of the Tower of Babel. He smote them, and that was it. They were scattered forever. He had no need to smite the Egyptians again once they were overthrown, and the same with the Babylonians. He had no need to repeat his works for them. Avol eschem hermadati achar puranus harbe. But as for you, the children of Israel, in your case, I have, even after all of the sufferings, I've always kept you in being. V'chitzai kolim atem einechem kolim, my arrows of chastisements against you, they will cease, but you do not cease. That is to say that even though God may repeatedly chastise Israel, unlike the case of the other nations, that he overthrows them forever, God may repeat chastisements precisely because he maintains Israel in life. And I would like to continue with our Hebrew text now of the prophet to go into the next section, because it's very integral to his rebuke in this whole section. So going now on in the Hebrew text to verse 7, to the Hebrew text, verse 7 of Malachi chapter 3. Lemiyemei avoisechem סרתם מחוקי ולא שמרתם שובו אלי ושובו עליכם אמר אדוני צבאות ואמרתם במה נשוב. Ever since the days of your fathers, you kept on turning away from the Torah. You did not guard the Torah as you should, but I'm inviting you again. Return to me and I'll come back to you. The gates are open. I've not changed. It's one and the same God of love and compassion. Before the sin and after the sin, the gates of repentance are open. And the people says, well, how? How shall we return? And God says, in this startling challenge in verse 8, Hayikba odom Elohim, ki atem koivim oisi, ואמרתם במה כוונוכו, המעשר והתרומו. Can a man defraud God? But you are defrauding me. You say, how? The people again innocently, we know nothing. What? Tell us what? You do it because you withhold the proper tithes, and your terumah gifts, the tithes of the Levites and the priests. They, in the times the temple was set apart for the temple services and for the teaching of Torah to the people, and the Torah had a whole system to support them through the Levitical tithe and the priestly terumah, but the people were withholding this. So they were, as it were, stealing from God by not giving to God's appointed ministers their proper dues. And now, returning to a theme that is common with the prophet Haggai, who also pointed out that by the people's not investing in the temple and the tithes, they were inflicting a curse on themselves because their produce was not blessed. Likewise, here Malachi expresses the same thing. Verse 9, במאירו אתם נאורים, ואויסי אתם כואבים, הגוי כולו. Here you are under this curse that you are being cursed with, namely the curse of the catastrophic failure of the crops and the coming of pests and other forces, predatory forces, and you are defrauding me. This is a challenging question. How can one steal from God? Yes, if you do not give your tithes and dues of tzedakah. The whole thing revolves around tzedakah. The redemption comes about through tzedakah. And here this beautiful verse 10, הביאו את כל המעשר אל בית האוצר ויהי תרב בביתי ובחנונינו בזויס אמר אדוני צבאות אם אלוהי אפתח לכם Eis arubois hashomayim, v'hari koisi lochem berocho ad belidoi. Well, just try it. Bring all your tithes to the treasury of God's temple, and then there will be there will be food in my house for the priests, for the Levites. Test me. You're allowed to test God. You're allowed to say, well, if I give charity and tithes. Let me see if indeed blessing will come into my life through this, and it will. This is the promise here. God says the one thing you're allowed to test God with, and in no other area are we permitted to test God, but with our tithes we may give our tithes more fully and then watch to see how blessing comes into our lives. See if God will not open to you the windows of the heavens and pour out upon you blessing without end. Brocha ad b'lidai, as our sages said, until your lips will just be worn out by saying, enough, 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 all of this blessing raining down upon us. And God will put an end to the predatory forces. Verse 11, וגוערתי לכם באויכיל, ולא ישחיס לכם אספרי הוא אדומו, ולא ישקיל לכם הגפן בשדה, אומר אדוני צבאות. I shall rebuke those locusts, those predatory forces that eat up your crops under this curse. They shall no longer destroy the fruits of the land, nor any more shall the vine be bereft of her fruits in the field, says the Lord of hosts. ואישרו אסכם כל הגויים, כי שהו אתם ארץ חפץ, אומר אדוני צבאות. And then all of the nations shall account you happy. You shall be the land of desire, says the Lord of hosts, to hear the final words of this parasha with the Hebrew cantillation. Ve'ishru esechem kol hagoyim, ki seyu atem eretz chayfetz, omar Adonai Tzevaos. With that, we come to the conclusion of our studies of the Navi for today, and we shall have a break for some minutes before returning to our studies of Rabbi Nachman's Likutei Moharan. Shalom again, my dear friends. I think the best thing we can do today on this very auspicious day here in the city of Jerusalem, the best thing we can do is to pursue relentlessly our Torah studies. There are very serious riots occurring down in the area of Gaza, which are being successfully contained by the Israeli Defense Forces, with considerable loss of life already to the rioters, which is really the fault of their leaders who have pushed them into this suicidal demonstration against reality, a demonstration against accepting facts. And we, thank God, have our holy Torah to guide us at all times. And I'm grateful that our lot is with the Torah and the study of the Torah. Let us therefore now turn to the words of Rabbi Nachman of Breslev in Likutei Moharan, Chelik Aleph, Torah Dalet, the first part of Likutei Moharan, the fourth teaching of part one. And in Shalom, today, the 29th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5778, eve of Rosh Chodesh Sivan, 14th of May 2018, the 44th day of the Omer. We continue in our study of Torah Dalet of the first chelik of Likutei Moharan from section Vav, which is a very important key to the understanding of what Rabbi Nachman is teaching us here, following on from the previous section where he had explained that it is through the confession of the person before the tzaddik, before the sage, that enables the sins that have been engraved on their bones to be removed. And now Reb Nachman is going to explain conceptually what is involved here in a very fascinating way. Continuing therefore with the Hebrew text, here we have the whole category of the return of Malchut to its root. We had earlier learned that when a person sins, he takes the holy Malchut, he takes his holy soul powers and drags them into exile in the forces of evil. But when he confesses before the Torah sage, the Malchut is being enabled to return to its root. And it is this that enables the person to understand that everything that happens to him is all God's kingship, God's dealings with him, whether it is for good or for better or for worse. Everything is from God. And then he will reach the state of knowledge that is the ideal state, where he knows everything is only for his good, and that is the returning of the Malchut to its root. And now Rabbi Nachman will explain to us how it is that the confession before the Torah sage accomplishes this. Ki shoresh amalchus hu eish. Metaphysically, the root of Malchut is on the side of fire, of the four Kabbalistic elements: air, fire, water, and earth. Air is the middle column, fire is the left-hand column, and water is the right-hand column. Fire, therefore, is the side of gevurah, limitation and harshness, just as fire burns up. And indeed, the source of God's kingship over the world is in God's attribute of fire. That is to say that Malchut, the exercise of power, is an exercise of might and the ability to discipline. And this association between Malchut and fire is proven by Rabbi Nachman with a reference to the Talmud in Tractate Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Aleph, Sanhedrin 101, according to the words of the sages, Lamator Nevot Sherosh Yotze Eish Me'amosoi. Rather cryptically here, you have to know the context to understand what Rabbi Nachman is saying. Nevat was the father of Jeroboam, Yeravam, who was the one who rebelled against the kingship of David. And Nevat made a mistake. We are told by our sages that he saw fire coming forth in a vision or a dream, fire coming forth from his membrum virilis, from his male organ, and he thought that he's going to be the king. He did not know that the kingship would actually be coming to his son. And Rabbi Nachman uses this saying of our sages to show that our sages understood a conceptual relationship between fire and malchut. Now, going on with the building of the syllogism, the argument, Rabbi Nachman says, well, v'haTorah nikres eish. The Torah itself is also called fire. Shemisham ha-malchus. Now, kingship and rule and power in the world is all assigned from and through the Torah. Any one of us that desires to become king and queen over our lives attains this through the freedom that the Torah brings. And the Torah is called fire. K'moshe Kosuv, Jeremiah chapter 23, Haloi koi devori ko'esh. God says, my word is like fire. Uchsiv bi melochim yimloichu. Proverbs chapter 8, where Solomon is talking in the voice of the Torah, says, through me the kings rule. So here Rabbi Nachman has brought two proof texts from the Tanakh of his assertion that Malchut is the aspect of fire, and it's rooted in the Torah, which is called fire, as stated by Jeremiah. We're now taking the argument a step further. Ve'ikar ha'Torah eim atalmidei chachomim. The very essence of the Torah is the Torah scholars. It's no good having the Torah sitting there in scrolls of writing and in thick, fat tomes of the Talmud. It's got to be alive with people reading it, chanting it, declaiming it, thinking about it, contemplating it, teaching it, spreading it. And that is the role of the Talmidei Chachomim, of the Torah scholars. Our sages asserted the fact that it's the Torah scholars who really are the essential Torah, when they said in Tractate Makos, Daf Chof Beis, folio 22, on the B side of the page, Kama tipshoi tekaimo mekame sefer Torah. How foolish are those people who will stand up in front of a Torah scroll, but they won't stand up to show respect to a firebrand of the sages. This is a Talmudic expression referring to a true Torah scholar, not just somebody who's got the name rabbi plastered to them after some crash 6-month Semicha course, but one of the true Torah sages of the Mishnah and the Talmud and the Kabbalah, one that is fully conversant with all of the written Torah and the oral Torah. He's a walking Sefer Torah, and somebody who won't get up to show him honor, who thinks that the honor is only given to the actual Torah scroll, is a complete fool. And so here Rabbi Nachman has put together the steps showing us that the very essence of the Torah, which is fire, is embodied in the Torah scholar. And now he will explain why, therefore, the sinner has to come before the Torah scholar, who is the embodiment of the Torah, to make his confession. One might want to confess one's sins in a very private way to God without anybody listening, but that's not enough, because we are thereby evading the critical view of the one listening to our confession and understanding our sins in the context of the actual Torah prohibitions. And therefore, the crucial part of the confession is not just to make the confession before the invisible God, but to do so in front of God's emissary and representative, as it were, namely the one who sits in the seat of Moses, who embodies the Torah through his knowledge and through his personal sanctity. And since it's the Torah scholar who is the embodiment of the fire of the Torah, now we have had the crucial link. Rabbi Nachman now quotes Book of Numbers, chapter 31. Anything that passes into fire, you must pass through the fire. Here Rabbi Nachman is referring to the section of the Torah that speaks after Moses had sent the Israelite armies to take vengeance on the Midianites, and they came back under the leadership of Pinchas. They came back to Moses in the camp with booty taken from the Midianites, including gold and silver vessels and utensils. And before they could use these, of course, they had to separate a percentage for the temple and for the rest of the people. And besides that, before anybody could have any use of these utensils, they had to be koshered. And in that section in Book of Numbers, chapter 31, it's the son of Aaron, Elazar, who steps forward and states the laws about the koshering of utensils which had previously been used by a pagan, by a non-Jew, who of course violated all of the Torah prohibitions against forbidden cooking and forbidden mixtures, forbidden ingredients, which are all absorbed into the walls of the vessel. So there the Torah teaches us, Kol dover asher yovoi bo'esh, if there is a utensil like a cooking pot that is used in the fire, namely it's metal, it won't burn up by the fire. It won't burn up if exposed to the fire, because when you roasted the meat in it, when you cooked the dish in it, it was not burned up. So anything which is customarily used in fire, the way to kosher it, the way to burn out the absorbed forbidden food that's gone into the walls of the vessel, ta'aviru bo'esh, you must pass it through the fire to purify it. This is called the process of libun, of making the metal utensil white hot until all of the absorbed prohibited materials is actually physically burned out of the vessel. Of course, you can't do this with a wooden vessel that may have absorbed something prohibited. There are, and you can't do it with an earthenware vessel. There are some vessels that you can kosher through water, but where it's through fire, you have to bring it back through the fire. If the forbidden ingredients were absorbed on the fire during the cooking by the pagan, the way to kosher the vessel is through passing it through the fire. Well, now, Rabbi Nachman, relating the words in the Torah text there to discussion, picks up on the word davar. He's already explained that words, language, are the very pivot of Malchut. It's through words and language that God expresses his Malchut, his kingship over us through the Torah. It's through our words of Torah and our prayers that we inscribe in our souls and write into God's book that we are attached to God's Malchut. Now, when, as the Rebbe explained earlier, a person sins, they take the holy Malchut, namely the commandment in God's Torah that has a particular tseruf otiyot, it has a particular configuration of letters, and that person, by denying the application of the prohibition to themselves, they rationalize their violation of the prohibition, and they put a false permutation inscribed on their bones, which goes on to take vengeance upon them. So now this davar asher yavo bo'esh, the malchut, which comes into the fire of sin, Shem Nimshach B'soich Atumo, B'soich Chamimus HaYetzer, it's the Holy Malchut, the soul powers were drawn down into the levels of impurity, into the heat of the evil inclination, Nur Amram, like our sages say in Talmud Kedushin, Daf Pei Aleph, Amud Aleph, folio 81, Nur Amram. Well, here the Talmud is, Rabbi Nachman is quoting just 3 words from a longer story about Rav Amram, who was one of the Amoraim, one of the teachers of the Talmud, who had redeemed a girl from captivity, but he had her in his house, and all of a sudden the evil inclination was tempting him to perform a forbidden act with her, and he went out of the house, running out of the house, screaming to all the neighbors to save him, screaming, "There's a fire in the house of Amram." So here, from his expression, he was trying to get all of his neighbors and friends to give him support, not to fall to the seductions of the evil inclination. So from this passage in the Talmud, that we see that Rav Amram is calling the evil inclination of fire. From here we learn that the evil inclination, which is the gateway to dragging the soul powers into the side of impurity, this is fire. And if the word, the Holy Malchut, has been dragged into the fire of evil, the repair is ta'aviru bo'esh, pass it again through the fire of purification. Tikuno al yidei eish, the repair is through the fire. And what is the fire? What is the spiritual equivalent of the purification of vessels through libun, through hag'alah, through removing the forbidden substances? Hainu vidui devorim lifnei talmid hacham, the verbal confession in front of the Torah sage, because he is the fire of the Torah, an embodiment of the fire of the Torah. And by having the courage to bring out one's words of confession before him and let him see the whole thing and put it before him so that he can shine upon it the perspective of the Torah and bring to bear on the person the fire of the Torah, that is what cleanses out the impurity from the person. And Rabbi Nachman, as almost an aside here, says, "V'zeh loshen avero." Now we can understand why a transgression in Hebrew is called an avero. The word avero is from the Hebrew root aver, which means one side, and the Hebrew root avar means to pass through from one side to the other. Why is a transgression called a passing through? Because the wrongful permutation of the whole letters of the Torah that comes about through a person transgressing, this wrongful permutation through the person's rationalizations of evil and their pursuing the evil act, it passes over into their bones, namely into their essential personality, to the very roots of their personality. May aver el aver goes from one side to the other. They are dragged down from the holy side to the unholy side. And to put it all back together again comes the mitzvah, the person repenting and now embracing the commandments of the Torah. Mitzvah loshen is habrus. The term mitzvah is an expression with a connotation of joining together, as in the Hebrew word tsevet, which is a team of people who work together. When a person puts together and gathers together bundles and bundles of commandments, of mitzvot, then are joined together again all of the shattered pieces of his bones. Like the words of the Psalm 34, Shomer kol atzmoisov, God, through the Torah, guards all of the bones of a person. So we see here how Rabbi Nachman has expressed the reason why the verbal confession of the sinner before the Talmid Chacham is efficacious in the person's redemption, because while the sin brought about the dragging down of the davar, the word, into the side of impurity, the confession is the libun, the hagalah, the kashering, the purification of the person through this stealing and tempering in fire, and this is done through the embodiment of the fire of the Torah, the Talmid Chacham, and then through the person now coming to perform the commandments of the Torah, their broken, shattered personality is able to be put back together again. With that, my friends, we conclude our studies for today, and with the help of God, I will be back with you this coming Thursday, which will be our last session before the festival of Shavuot, which falls next Sunday and Monday. There will be obviously no classes over the festival. Our Kollel program will continue with the help of God next week on Thursday, and the following Sunday, 1 week after the festival, I will be returning to my Shavuot Tov hookup with the help of God on the subject of Judeophobia. So for now, let me wish you Yom Tov Morach, a good and a blessed day, and blessings to you for tonight's Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month of Sivan, the month of our receiving and accepting of the Torah. May this bring blessing to you and to all Israel. Chodesh Tov U'Mevorach, a good and a blessed month.